Today, we're taking a closer look at the 1940 census in a bit of detail. So stick around, we'll do that right after this. Thank you, fellow roadie, for joining me for another video. This one's going to be a good one. Listen, we've been talking about the census a bit, and I just wanted to show you in a little bit more detail what can be found in the census records. Now, every census is going to look a little different. So we're going to look today at the 1940 census, the latest one that's available for everyone. Of course, it's going to be different than the 1930 census, and it's going to be different, at least a little bit, than the 1920 census, 1910, 1900, and so on and so on. I can't go through each individual census, but we'll take a look at the 1940 census so you can get a general idea of what these census records look like. We just looked at them in general before, and the type of information that's in there. You might be surprised at the detailed information you could find. So let's go over to my computer and let's take a look at the 1940 census. Okay, here we are in the 1940 census. Now, I'm in Ancestry.com. Of course, you can look at this in Family Search if you want, or anywhere else online you can find the 1940 census. Now, let's zoom in a little bit. Let's look at the top part here. Okay, now you're going to see that even, and it's going to be different for different censuses once again. Zooming in here makes this a little fuzzy. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. But it will tell you the state and county that we're in, the name of the city, in this case Mifflin Township in Pennsylvania, right in the middle here. It's showing that this is the 16th census of the United States, 1940, and it's the population schedule. There's some other schedules that are in some of the census years, but we'll talk about that at some other point. Now you can see over here, there's an SD number and an ED number. Now let's talk about the ED number first. ED is an enumeration district. That's the area that a particular census enumerator was assigned to cover for the census, to go door to door in that area. Now the SD is a supervisor district. That will entail a number of enumeration districts. That can be different from census to census also. Now it'll also show the date that the enumerator went around on this page to these people, in this case April 22nd, 1940. And the enumerator actually signs this thing too. It looks like Agatha Hornfeck, I think it probably is. Over here, in this box, you see a sheet number. In this case, 14B. There were sheets on the left and the right, A on one side, B on the other. So this is number 14 in this book of forms that they had. All right, let's go down to the meat of it. Now, here you'll see all the way across the top, it'll tell what the different columns are for. Over here on the far left, you can see written vertically, actually, is the name of the street that these people are on. So you can see that this Mayer family and this Sorg family are both on a street called Polly's Lane. Now, because this is handwriting, you might have trouble reading it. I have the advantage, having grown up in this area, of knowing what the names of some of the streets were and some of the people that lived in this area. And in this case, yeah, it's Polly's Lane. Polly's Lane, P-A-U-L-E''S. Now, you look on column 2. Wait a minute. What's that? Oh, time for a hot tip. Okay, this is a hot tip that I think will be very useful to you. Now, you can see already we're zoomed in enough to see the meat of the census form here, where the enumerator has gone around and taken down the names of people and so on. But you can see up the top of the columns, there's a description of what it is, and you can see the larger writing, but boy, the rest of it is fuzzy. So what you can do is the Census Bureau has blank census forms that you can go in and download. You can keep that handy when you're looking at a census. In this case, the 1940 form, and I'll show you that here real quick. That's the 1940 blank form that I found online, and I'll put the link to where you can find these blank forms down below in the description, so check that out. Okay, back to the census form. Now we're in column 2. That is the house number for that particular building. Now, you'll see for the Mayer family and the Sorg family, you'll see there's just a dash there. Now, if we go down and look further down, whoops, you can see that there's other houses on different streets that have house numbers. Now, why doesn't this one have a house number? Well, because this was an RFD. So they did not have house numbers for those particular houses. And you can also see that when you scroll over, on Ancestry at least, you scroll over, you can see that it will tell you actually what that column is and what's written in that block. So, you can see number 3, column 3. I scroll over it. It says the number of household in order of visitation. This is just a number that the enumerator gives to that household. It's an arbitrary number. This is the 257th house that this enumerator visited. Doesn't mean anything. Like I said, she just arbitrarily numbers it one up. You can see the next household would be 258. So we go over here to column 4. And this one asks the homeowner whether the home is owned or rented. And you see if I scroll over it, there's an O there. It'll be either an O or an R. In this case, they owned it. Now, column 5 here asks for the value of the home, which in this case is $1,750. Now, compare that down here to his neighbor, the Sorg family, whose value of the home is $6,000. Boy, that's almost a mansion compared to the Mayers, right? Okay, over here on column 6, it asks if they live on a farm. This is a fairly common question in the census because they wanted the government wanted to know how many farms there were. In this case, no, it's not a farm. Okay, so here we've got the family. The first family we're showing here is the Mayer family. Now you can see the first name for the head of the family is a little bit of a different first name. It's actually Fidelis. I've never run across that first name for a man any other time, except for this guy here. Okay, so you see he's got Jessie, his wife. We've got 3 daughters, Regina, Dolores, Josephine, and 2 sons, Joseph and Charles. I go over to column 9, and that asks for the sex of the person, male or female. Then column 10, color or race. Everyone's white in this family. And then age at last birthday in column 11. Age at last birthday, and that can be different from place to place too, or census to census rather, because some censuses will say what was the age of each person as of April 1st of this year, or whenever this census started. Now, strangely enough, if I look down the bottom of the blank census form that I have on another monitor here, it will say to enter the age of children born on or after April 1st, 1939, as follows. Then it gives each month: April 1939, say 11/12, May 1939, 10/12, and so on and so forth. But the interesting instruction it says is do not include children born on or after April 1st, 1940. That's interesting. Now, because this is age at last birthday, see the head of the family, Fidelis, he's 37 years old. Now, his birthday could be the next day or the next week where he will turn 38, but they're just asking for the age at the last birthday. So that's something to keep in mind. And once again, if there was a child born since April 1st, 1940, we can take a look again and see that this enumeration took place on April 22nd, 1940. So if there had been a child born between April 1st and April 22nd of 1940, even though they are alive and living in that household, they will not be listed in this census. These are the kind of little things that you need to be aware of when you're looking at analyzing the census. Something else that's interesting here, and oh man, yes, this is a hot tip. Yes, another hot tip. Okay, folks, I don't know if you noticed or not. Let me scroll up a little further here. Look over here. There's a little X with a circle around it next to Jesse in the Mayer household, the wife, next to Caroline, the wife in the Sorg household, and down here you got Carl, the head of the household, in the Kelly household. Now, what in the world is that? Well, actually, it tells you up here. It might be hard to read because it's fuzzy, and if I zoom in anymore, it's going to be even fuzzier. But it says to enter, and well, let me get on my form on my other thing here. It says enter a circled X after the name of the person furnishing this information. So this is showing you who is actually providing this information for that household. Now, lots of times it's the wife, because very often the census enumerator will be coming during the day, and usually the man is working outside the home. But you can see very often it's the wife. Okay, so that's your hot tip. But let's continue now. Let's go. Now you'll see over on the left here that on Ancestry at least, because the name scrolls off as you scroll over this page, it will pop up the names that are there, so you don't have to, scroll back and forth to see which person this information belongs to. Okay, so let's go to column 12. That is the marital status of each person. Now, they can put an S for single, M for married, WD for widowed, or D for divorced. Now, let's scroll down here. Scroll down to this Sorg household, and we'll go back over here. Now, if you look down here, You see, you got Michael the head, Caroline the wife, whew. Got Albert the son, Michael the son. Then you have Charlotte Kinney. It's not the same name, but it's his daughter. Why wouldn't she have the same name? Well, she's 34 years old, and look here at the marital status. There's a D. She's divorced. She's divorced and now living with her parents again. And you can see that there's not only a Charlotte Kinney, there's a Raphael Kinney, Michael Sorg's grandson, and Doris Kinney, Michael Sorg's granddaughter. So pretty clearly the children of Charlotte Kinney. Now, oh man, there's another hot tip. Woo-wee. They're just coming all over the place now. Okay, look down here at Doris Kinney. Now you see what pops up. Now this information that pops up when you scroll over it in Ancestry, and this is true for other sites too, people have gone through, human beings have gone through and transcribed these census records. And in this case, whoever transcribed it, transcribed this person's name as Lewis. But it sure looks like Doris to me. See, the D goes up here, and the P from Raphael, they sort of run into each other. So this person, for whatever reason, saw that as Lewis. He didn't look over here to see that it's a granddaughter. Now, you could have strange names. Some that seem to be male names for females, and some the other way around for the sexes. But this, to me, looks pretty clearly to be Doris. So be on the lookout for that. Don't rely entirely on the transcription of any of this information. Okay, let's go back up to the Mayer family. Okay. Now, where do we leave off? Okay, column 12, which for them, married children are all single. Okay. Column 13 is asking whether this person attended school or college. In the information above, it wants to know if this person has attended school or college at any time since March 1st, 1940. In this case, the mother and father of the family, no, and most of the children, yes, but not the youngest child, who's 6 years old. Okay, we go over to column 14. See, this is the descriptions are really faded here, but column 14. Column 14 is the highest grade of school completed. Once again, that's completed, not the grade they're currently in, the highest grade completed. In this case, Fidelis, Jesse, 8th grade. Here, Regina, the first year of high school. She's 16 years old. The highest grade she's completed so far is the first year of high school. So she's probably in the second year of high school. Just like Dolores, the highest grade she's completed is 6th grade. So she's probably in 7th grade now. Josephine, 4th grade. And Joseph, 4th grade, which brings up another interesting thing. Look at this, Josephine and Joseph, the daughter and son. They both are the same age, and they're both in the same grade. You can assume that they are twins. And in this case, I do know that these two are twins. Of course, Charles, 6 years old. Okay, let's go over here to column 15. This asks where the person was born. It just needs the state, territory, or possession, it says in the description up above. And it says that Foreignborn give the country in which the birthplace was situated on January 1st, 1937. Now, I'm not sure exactly what the significance of that particular date is, but you know that the borders of countries in Europe especially were changing a good bit. Even though this census was taken in 1940, if you're foreign-born, they want to know the name of the country you were born in and what country that place belonged to as of January 1st, 1937. Okay, that's not a problem here at the Mayer family because they were all born in Pennsylvania. Now, for the Sorg family, it's a little different. Michael was born in Pennsylvania. Caroline was born in Germany. Which brings us to column 16. Column 16 is citizenship of the foreign-born persons. Not a problem for the Mayer family. They're all born in Pennsylvania. But now Caroline Sorg is N.A. for naturalized. Once again, at the bottom of the census form, it gives instructions for the enumerator to put N.A. if they're naturalized, P.A. if they have their first papers, A.L. if they're a resident alien, and AMCIT if they're an American citizen who was born abroad. I'm not exactly sure what the difference between a naturalized citizen is and an American citizen born abroad, unless it's something along the lines of an AMCIT might be the child of an American military person that was stationed overseas. That's what I'm guessing, but I don't know that for sure. Okay, over here on column 17, what they're asking is where the person was living as of April 1st, 1935. Once again, this census is taken every 10 years. So there's one taken in 1930, this one's 1940, and I've never seen this question on any other census, but they wanted to know, where did you live 5 years ago? And they want to know the city, town, or village, whether having 2,600 or more inhabitants. If it has less inhabitants than 2,600, then the enumerator is supposed to place an R. I believe that R is for rural. So in this case, it says the same place. But if it's different, and we'll go down here and look at William Green here. And he is a boarder in the Sorg household. He was originally born in Kentucky. And in 1935, he was living in the town of Duquesne, which is very close to this location. And it's in the same county, Allegheny County in Pennsylvania. This person in 1935 was living in McKeesport, which is also in this, close to this area, in the same county and state. But it's also asking for residents in 1935, in addition to the city, county, and then the state or the territory or foreign country. In this case, on this page, I don't believe anybody was living. No one was living in a foreign country in 1935 that's on this page. Now, up here in column 20, it's asking whether this location they lived in 1935 was on a farm or not. Y for yes, N for no. In this case, she wrote out the answers there. Now we get over to column 21, and this whole, for the rest of this area here, you can see, you can probably read this, although it's fuzzy. It says this information is for persons 14 years old and over, and they're about their employment status. Now, very often in many previous censuses, they do ask for your occupation and industry, like they do right here in this one. But you can see they ask a lot more questions. And I'm sure this has something to do with the very recent Great Depression that just happened in the country. So over here in column 21, it asks, and I will read this as it's listed up top of the column there. It says, was this person at work for pay or profit in private or non-emergency government work during the week of March 24th through 30th? And of course the answer is yes or no. See, Fidelis, yes, he was. His wife was not, his oldest daughter was not, and of course the other minor children were not. See, Michael Sorg, on the other hand, was not employed at that time. So then they ask for more information. Number 22 says if you answered no under column 21, said if not, was this person at work on or assigned to public emergency work, such as the WPA, NYA, CCC, etc., which were public work programs during the Depression. So were they doing any of this during the week of March 24th through 30th? It didn't apply to Fidelis Mayer, and the answer was no also for Michael Sorg, the head of the Sorg household. Column 23 and 24 were only if there was no for both columns 21 and 22. See, it gets a little complicated here. This is the most complicated I've seen in any census up to this point. But once again, I think they're asking more of these detailed work things because of the Great Depression. So they ask in column 23, once again, it only applies if answered no in columns 21 and 22. They're asking, was this person seeking work? Yes or no? See, Fidelis Mayer's wife was not seeking work. Neither was his oldest daughter. Down there, Michael Sorg, he also was not seeking work at that time. Column 24, once again, if answered no in both column 21 and 22, if not seeking work, did he have a job or a business, etc.? Yes or no? And Michael Sorg's answer is no. Column 25, it says, indicate whether engaged in home housework, in school, with an S, unable to work with a U, or other, OT. So you can see Fidelis Mayer's wife doing homework. Regina Mayer, their oldest daughter, was still in school. And old Michael Sorg, he's having a tough time. There's a U for him. He is considered unable to work. His wife is doing housework. Fortunately, they have two sons who are working in a steel mill. So I assume they're helping out with keeping the household going since their father has no job and is unable to work for whatever reason. Now over here in column 26, they're still asking about employment status. So they're asking if you have answered yes in column 21, which means basically you have a job working for profit, for pay or profit in private or non-emergency government work during that week. It asks how many hours did you work during the week of March 24th through 30th. And you can see that Fidelis Mayer, he worked 40 hours that week. So he's doing fine. Then here, of course, Michael Sorg and Caroline Sorg, the mother and father of the family, did not work. Albert Sorg worked 24 hours that week. Now, column 27 asks for the duration of unemployment up to March 30th, 1940 in weeks. So now you can see down here Michael Sorg, Michael Sorg's son, Michael Sorg, he had been unemployed for 10 weeks. But it's a little confusing because he doesn't give any hours that he had worked that week. So maybe he had just started working. Then, of course, you can see in columns 28 and 29 that will say what their occupation is and the industry. Like an example they give on the form here for the industry is cotton mill, retail grocery, farm, shipyard, public school, so on and so forth. So Fidelis, you can see he's an electrician at what he called the steam railroad. probably a pretty good job to have. And he was working 40 hours a week, so that's pretty good. Okay, now Michael Sorg's sons, Albert, he's what's called a second helper in the steel mill. Not sure what that is. And his son, Michael, is a laborer in a steel mill. Of course, working in the steel mill, not unusual for this area of the country. So in column 30, it asks for class of worker. Now, it doesn't say up top what they're supposed to put in there, because I certainly wouldn't know. But looking on the bottom, it gives instructions for class of worker. I guess the most common one is wage or salary worker in private work, which is PW, which you can see is for Fidelis and for Michael Sorg's two sons. If you're a wage or salary worker in government work, that's GW. If you're an employer, it's an E. Working on own account, self-employed, it's OA. And if you're an unpaid family worker, that's NP. Okay, now they have these codes here that the Census Bureau does themselves. You can see the enumerator, it tells the enumerator to leave it blank. So they do something back in either Washington, D.C. or the supervisor of the supervisor district would fill that out. Not sure which. Okay, column 31 says number of weeks worked in 1939. It says equivalent full-time weeks. So if you work part-time, you're supposed to figure out how many hours, I guess, total that you worked in 1939, and then divide that by 40, and that will tell you how many full-time weeks that you worked. You have to do some math there, I guess. So you can see for Fidelis, the number of hours he worked, number of weeks he worked in 1939, or the equivalent full-time weeks, is 44 weeks. If you look down at Michael Sorg's two sons, Albert worked 26 weeks, and Michael Sorg worked 20 weeks. Okay, then over to column 32, where they ask 32 and 33 refers to income in 1939. And they specify the 12 months ending in December 31st, 1939. In 32, it asks for the amount of money, wages, or salary received, including commissions. In this case, Fidelis Mayer, for his 44 weeks of work, earned $1,200. Of course, Michael Sorg had no earnings for 1939. His son Albert earned $1,100 for 26 weeks of work, and Michael Sorg earned $600 for 20 weeks of work. So Albert Sorg earned almost as much as Fidelis Mayer, but just worked 26 weeks as opposed to Fidelis's 44 weeks. That's kind of interesting. So you can see all kind of stories and things you could think about while you go through all this detailed information about these people, your ancestors, details about their lives that the census can provide. Okay, then on column 33, it says, did this person receive income of $50 or more from sources other than money, wages, or salary? Yes or no? And that could be any number of things, I suppose. But in this case, our Mayer and Sorg families had no additional income. Column 34 is number of the farm schedule, which something I assume was another schedule that if people lived on a farm that they filled out. Now, let's go down here. There's even more. There are, and they did this in at least one other census, but they have supplementary questions. Really, they just pick two people at random, whoever happens to land on line 55 or line 68. In this case, line 55, the person there is William Green, who's a boarder in the Michael Sorg household. He's a 42-year-old white man. The other person who randomly got lucky to answer some supplementary questions is Harry Lynn on line 68. Harry Lynn is the son of Albert and Ethel Lynn. He's a white male, 17 years old. These are the questions they asked him. Now, on a lot of previous censuses, they asked everybody not only where they were born, but where their mother and father were born. Now, if you remember, William Green was born in Kentucky, and you see here his mother and father in column 36 and 37. They were both born in Kentucky. And they want to know your mother tongue or native language. And this was asked in, I think, at least a couple of other censuses also. So in both cases, English is their native language. And then they have some questions for veterans. You can see on column 39, they're asking if you are a veteran. And there's nothing blank there, so I assume the answer is no. Then they ask if they're a child of a veteran father who's dead. That's interesting. So once again, assuming no, because the columns are blank. Then they ask in column 41, still under the heading of veterans, they want to know which war they fought in or what military service they were in. And all of that is blank for these two people randomly chosen based on what line they happened to land on in this census form. And then they asked some questions about Social Security, which of course was fairly new at that time. There's three questions there. Column 42 is, does this person have a federal Social Security number? Yes or no? In this case, the older gentleman does, the 17-year-old does not. Because, in the old days, you didn't get a Social Security number until you went to work. So it's been a fairly recent thing that you essentially got a Social Security number when you're born. So in column 43, they ask, were deductions for federal old age insurance or railroad retirement from this person's wages or salary in 1939? Did they deduct any of that money in 1939? Yes or no? In this case, old William did answer yes. And in column 44, it asked, if so, were deductions made from all, half or more, part but less than 1/2 of wages or salary? And William, they just have the number 1. I just have to assume at that point means that they were deducted from his full salary. Then it asks again what his usual occupation is, and in this case, he's a brakeman on the steam railroad. And usual class of worker, which should be the same thing as above. And then this one is really interesting. There's a section here, 3 columns 48 through 50, for all women who are or have been married. Column 48 asking, has this woman been married more than once? Yes or no? Of course, neither of these two people are women, so they didn't have to answer that. And column 49 asked, age at first marriage. Now, some of these questions were asked in previous census years. Age at first marriage, specifically. And then in column 50, a number of children ever born. And the instructions say do not include stillbirths. Some previous censuses will ask for the number of children that the woman has given birth to and how many are still alive. And those other instructions I was reading to you are here at the bottom. And once again, they're probably a little tough to read. They're a little fuzzy because they're smaller. There you go. 1940 census. Once again, the information in each census is going to vary with each individual census. There will be a lot of the same information. I mean, they'll still have the names, at least since 1860, the relationship to the head of the household, age, sex, race, things like that, where you were born. Like I said, in several other previous ones, where your mother was born, where your father was born, so on and so forth. So I hope this was helpful. Just to take a tour, if you've never seen census records before, especially, look at the information that's in here. Now, generally, I'm speaking generally here, The further back you go, the less information there is. But look how much information is here in this document, the 1940 census. It can lead you to so many other records. And we'll talk about that at a later time. So for now, thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time on the road to your family history.